Good afternoon. Welcome back to the World Junior Ultimate Championships of 2018. We're here on the Showcase Field in Waterloo. This field is brought to you by Cut Camps. This afternoon, we've got Finland facing off against New Zealand. This is in the men's division, but story of the day, there's actually a female player on the Finnish team, so we're very interested to see her role. She's one of the best known players in Finland. We're absolutely thrilled to see her out here with a chance. And so I'm Naomi Redmond, joined by Tushar Singh. He's going to be your play-by-play commentator, and I'm going to be giving you the most colorful commentary I can. So Tushar, you can take it away.
Thank you very much, Naomi. New Zealand now with a drop as well. We've had 2 drops so far in this first point. I would like to say that this is probably caused by the wind. We saw it in the warm-ups, but both of these teams having a little bit of trouble with how the wind behaves on this field because it's not consistent all the way down. Zone coming from New Zealand. Into the end zone, number 55, Wiedemann for the point, and Finland hold.
Tushar, I was taking a look at these 2 teams warming up before this game, seeing what their different strategies were. New Zealand didn't start warming up until about 15 minutes before. They did a slow warm-up. Both teams only have 18 players out at this tournament, so it was interesting. But Finland running a lot of lines, getting a lot of throws and a lot of hucks in, and they were going upwind as well. So for you folks at home, it is getting quite windy here today. The wind is going from the left side of the screen to the right side of your screen, and so Finland was practicing throwing those upwind hucks. So we'll see what they do with that as the game goes on.
Interesting conditions for the players compared to yesterday, the first day of full first day of play for the tournament. It's not that warm, but it is windy, overcast, and if you haven't played in Waterloo before, these are very typical conditions for the area. This pole looks like it's sailing out of bounds. And following up on what you said about how they warmed up, it was New Zealand was also doing shorter passes, moving discs as if they were going through a zone, whereas Finland was working on a lot of that longer, those huck drills as well. Tall handler setup here. Whitlock, you're going to hear that name a lot. Coming in into a horizontal setup, goes wide to Fitzpatrick Cockram. Back to Whitlock after a quick swing, and a huck. It looks to be Scott under it. Scott gets in the back corner of the end zone, and New Zealand make it a quick 1-1 as well. A lot cleaner point that time around.
Yeah, that was really nice movement. As you said, Whitlock, one of the central handlers here, really using his height, setting his feet, putting up that nice throw, going downwind. Sometimes it can be harder than throwing upwind. You're not going to expect it, but the disc gets pushed down so fast, and it makes it really hard for the receiver to run onto it.
And New Zealand playing many utility players, not dedicated players necessarily as a handler or a cutter, but much like the Australians, mixing it up, and perhaps an influence in styles there as well. With Australia having a larger ultimate playing population than New Zealand, although ultimate being about the same age in both countries. Pulling into the wind now will be number 7, Graydon Scott, for New Zealand. Low pole. Lands near the brick mark. It's going to be moved to Vetari. Vinquist moves it to sideline with the force so far. To Rekula. It's now a flick force. Nieminen. Very quick movement from the Finnish players here. Vinquist moving it to the sideline upfield. Oala sends it up, tries to get it to Rekula. New Zealand with a disc. That was a little bit of cleaner movement from Finland as well, but shorter passes, not those deep opportunities.
Yeah, I think that was great movement from the handlers. It looks like Finland has some more shorter players, a little quicker on their feet, and that was great movement, but unfortunate throwing error into the end zone.
Skinner cutting up line. Driscoll with the disc, dumps it. Sider looking upfield. Driscoll looking deep to Skinner. Scott. Deep swing to McEwen. Looking upfield back to McEwen. Pops into the end zone. Floater challenged. Taken by number 9, Driscoll.
It's a nice grab.
And New Zealand break, making it 2-1. Little bit of a battle there in the air, but seemed to be an easy catch in the end.
It looked like that was really the only defensive pressure that Finland put on New Zealand. They were able to move back and forth quite a bit. I'd like to see a little bit more lateral movement from New Zealand. They sort of forced it up the sideline for so long. That can get really dangerous, especially when you're going upwind. The disc might not go exactly in the straight path that you're looking for. So it's good to be in the middle of the field to give yourself a little bit more of a margin of error.
Yeah, both teams very close to the sideline on that particular point, forcing it up, but getting those cuts, but doing well to also create the space on that side. So at least so far, fairly disciplined in terms of their cuts. We haven't seen the long hucks come out just yet. Let's see if there's going to be pressure on that. Finland now going into the wind. New Zealand with a fast line on as Whitlock sends a huge pull, assisted by the wind going out the back. Recula to pick it up. Maybe pronouncing that incorrectly. Please tweet at us.
We really are doing our best with all these different countries, all these different languages, but the predominance of our commentary team is very Anglophone, so we're having a bit of a hard time with some of these pronunciations.
Pick called. And a quick equipment as well. Technical called. Recula with some instructions. Whitlock saying it's okay. Lace it up.
I think that's one of those calls, shoelace or whatnot. As long as both teams are okay with it, it can become a danger to other players if there's an untied shoelace or something like that. So I think it's a great spirit from both sides to let this gentleman tie up his shoe.
It's coming in, Scott on the mark. Number 55, Wiedemann. Battled with, picked up by number 28, Luk Kwok. IO break and being chased. It was a good throw by Whitlock, but I don't think that the receiver picked up on it.
A little too visionary, you could say.
And intended for Benter Lynch. Recula walking to pick up the disc again is the primary handler. At some points they had an interesting almost a 1-6 setup in the finish stack.
And here we have 3 handlers back, which is also something that isn't the usual when you see a vertical.
Nagy sends it deep. It's floating. And it's going to be picked up a Savolainen. Oh, no. It's
unfortunate drop there.
Scott sends a deep pressure once again to Kwok. Whitlock. We've got wide open.
Finland doing a really great job here with switching defense. It's person, but they're doing a really good job of checking their players and switching for the most favorable matchups.
Scott to Whitlock. And a deep put. Kwok is battling. Good D by Runanen there.
Yeah, that was a great box out by her.
And a high five between Kwok and Runanen there. Bit of respect. Well played on D. Wiedemann, it appears, picking up the disc this time. Rakula doing the first cut out of the stack, but not getting a chance. Meetinen giving it a try, but the wind catching that. Whitlock. Kwok striking deep. And wide open Driscoll. And in the end zone, Sider with New Zealand getting another break, but that one wasn't as easy.
I do think both teams are throwing a lot of those inside breaks. They're very fast, a lot of muscle behind them, and they're having a hard time completing a lot of those. I think there's maybe they should reevaluate looking at going for the around throw instead. It's less fast. It doesn't have to be rifled right into the hands of their player. It might be a little bit higher percentage, especially in the wind.
And we speak with many of the players that we coach ourselves, especially those that might be starting to play higher level ultimate, is that you can't just get the throw off. It has to be catchable as well. And so many of these players may still be working on those areas. They're also coming off of some intense games from yesterday. This is their first game of the day, but this might be the second game of the day. We'll double check, but they have already had a couple of games that we know of, and we have the outcomes on as well. As mentioned, Finland the number 6 seed in the pool. So they have already played Sweden and Australia. And New Zealand has also faced off against Sweden, but also played Hong Kong. Vetari. Vinquist. Kuvaya looks back. Picked up by Nieminen. Vinquist to Nieminen. They're close now, but still moving it up that line. In the dump spot, we've got Veranen. And Vetari again up line, just going up that line. Vinquist, but then a huge layout D by Elliott from New Zealand. And that's the danger, is when you get into that habit of just going up the line, how does the defense pick up on it?
Yeah, and I think both teams are getting sucked into that a little bit. I think especially because of the wind, it makes those around throws a little bit more dangerous. You have to really set your feet, really take a deep breath before you try and especially throw a flick around. But working hard in the middle here.
Fitzpatrick Cochran sends it wide in, and it just dies near the end zone. And that's where these players, perhaps at halftime, need to find some time to throw, especially at that part of the field. The wind is much different there on the left side than on the right side. These are almost stadium-like conditions that way. McEwen marking. Just taking a second to get caught up. Vettori. Looking for the dump, is going to have to put it. And it's called stall down there, but they're going to have to turn down the field, so no call as Elliott will pick it up and bring it into play. There's a stoppage. Elliott was looking for McEwen there. He's going to get him up line, and this one is floater and picked up by Skinner. Back to McEwen. Burns. It's floating again. McEwen looking in the end zone, and finally Fitzpatrick Cockrum scores it. Finland calls their first timeout as they go down. Another break, 4-1 to New Zealand.
McEwen doing a really great job on that point, taking a lot of body contact from the Finnish player who was marking him, but staying composed and not letting it get to his head, throwing anything crazy. We see that a lot. That's what they call the conservation of greatness or lack thereof. And I think he did a great job in that point, keeping composed and throwing the right throws.
We saw both teams struggling with a win there as well on that point. But the real story there seems to be the high stall count semi-punt down the field. What was New Zealand doing down the field? Or was Finland not doing something?
I think there was some good person defense there. I think, like I was saying before, there was a lot of switching from both sides on D. I think they're both playing very mature defense, using a lot of communication and making sure that everyone is covered in a team way. Even though it's still person defense, they have all of their players with their heads up looking to help out if there's an opportunity.
Well, exciting to see them both playing here. Both teams coming with a roster of 18. However, each team sporting an injury. On Finland, number 36, Soini on the sideline. He's usually a handler, so missing out on some handling power there. And then we've got a cutter, Rob, on New Zealand, number 0, who injured himself in an exhibition match ahead of the actual tournament. You might see him with a foot cast wandering around. He does also have a easier transport mechanism to get around these fields so that he doesn't have to walk everywhere. Now, what are we going to see from New Zealand coming out of this timeout?
On defense here, they did put that zone on earlier, and Finland is going to be trying to work it uphill, upwind here. So I wouldn't be that surprised if they put that zone on again. They've got a huge presence in Whitlock, probably roaming the backfield. Those poles are so big. This one looks like it's going to stay in bound, so this is going to be interesting here.
Recula. And vertical comes out. Throws an IO with float. We've got pressure, though, as Whitlock snatches it out from the slightly shorter player, which is tough to say because this Finnish team is fairly tall. But Whitlock then sends it deep. Recula chugging down, but caught in the end by Graydon Scott, number 7 for New Zealand. Good to see Finland, though, taking that chance on the deep.
And that was exactly the throw that they were practicing in the warm-up right before the game. We could see them. They were starting about half field and looking at what angles were the best for the to get things into the end zone. But with Whitlock back there, he's just such a dominant presence. And then on the turnover, such a skilled thrower. He's going to be so dominant for this New Zealand squad for the rest of the game.
Finnish coach now on the sideline making a little bit of a statement to get his players engaged. If you are familiar with the character of Finns, they traditionally are not loud outside of their heavy metal. And very conservative. I'm a fan of Formula One, so my current favorites are Kimi Räikkönen, although I believe Mika Häkkinen would be my favorite any day if he managed to come back someday and race. On the New Zealand side, they're going to go and try and get another break. Huge pull into the wind by Whitlock, but it's sailing outside of the field, but staying within the fence. Vapu Runanen's going to be picking it up. The EUYC 2017 MVP in the women's division. Has played on the under-20 women's team from 2015 to 2017, taking an opportunity here because Finland is only sending the men's team. Send it to middle to number 73, Miettinen. Bernanen moves it to the sideline. Kuvaya sends it deep. There is a stall count as well. And they're going to have a quick discussion. The game advisor was quite close as well. The vertical stack from Finland there was working out, but they'll take advantage of the early plays if they have them. But I think they're a little bit too static, or
I think the tough part of that there was Runanen trying to get picking up, trying to get the reset in the middle of the field. Kwok playing excellent defense on her. She wasn't able to shake free, and so that I believe that's number 88, Kuvaya. He was waiting for her to get open and unable to find her. That resulted in having to throw out the Hail Mary.
Elliott with a disc, moves it to Sider. Sider to Kwok. Thought about the hammer. Elliott. Gets it upfield to Sider. Back to Elliott, and then up line for a point by Whitlock. Instead of throwing them, he catches that one. And New Zealand up 6-1 with their 5th break of the game. Finland showed much change in composure on the sideline. Still very reserved. Tough to read this team, but they need to make some adjustments.
We were talking about that. If anyone at home was watching the last game, or 2 games ago that we streamed, it was the Netherlands facing against Mexico, and the difference in the sideline presence between the two teams. Mexico really fired up, cheering. Their women's team was here, cheering them on, and that really helped them get some Ds, get amped up, and keep them in the game for a lot longer than they might have been if they weren't as excited. So I think it might be something for this Finland team to think about. If hopefully someone can make a big play, can create a TSN turning point and get their team into the game, get them fired up.
And just to explain that reference, TSN is a local sports network, and there are many, there's a small show on there where they show a few turning points for the games, or they mention it that this was the turning point. It's Wiedemann looking for an option, gets it to Vinquist. Bit of contact in the midfield, but Nieminen wide open, looking for deep. Rekula, straight up mark there, and into traffic, and I think that was intended for Wiedemann.
Nice grab.
Run down by Scott. Sends it over the top. Should have time to get to it. And Ford, Hamish Ford, brings it in. Finland takes their second time out as New Zealand makes it 7-1. This is a somewhat an unexpected scoreline considering some of the closer matchups they've had with common opponents earlier in this tournament. For example, Sweden versus Finland. They both played Sweden. And I'm wondering if you can compare those outcomes there to what an expectation here might be.
Well, actually, looking at the score here, when Finland played against Sweden, they lost 15-7. And then when Sweden played New Zealand was able to beat Sweden 15-10. So maybe not that much of a surprise. New Zealand is looking quite polished this tournament, actually. Their other game, playing against Hong Kong, they beat that team 15-2. So New Zealand, I think, really finding their stride early in this tournament. They haven't really been challenged yet, so that'll be something to look at as we move forward in the tournament to see when they're playing some of the higher-ranked teams in the A pool. They're going to look at Australia later in the pool as well. I believe Team USA is in there with them in the mix. So we'll see how the rest of the week goes for them before we move on into the semifinals.
So the men's pool here, Pool A, with the United States of America as the 1 seed in the pool, as well as overall for the men's division, followed by Great Britain, Japan, Sweden, New Zealand, Finland, Australia, Hong Kong, and the Dominican Republic. So quite a few chances here. Finland coming in as the 6th seed in this pool, as mentioned. And that Australia matchup there, 15-7, Australia being a typically strong ultimate country as well, means that we could have a interesting matchup between New Zealand and Finland, an Oceania battle there, which should have plenty of fans monitoring the scores at that time, but perhaps some bragging rights there as well on the line.
Absolutely. And I think we would anticipate both those teams to play a relatively similar style of Ultimate. We haven't really seen them face off, or we haven't seen them face off yet this tournament on the women's side as well. So it'll be exciting to see what happens in the next rounds.
Taken by Vetari to Rekula. And a little bit of pace as Windquist now on the far side, and Rekula creates a space for himself. And Windquist still going deep, looking for something, but being called in by Nagy to Rekula. Close to the end zone again now. In this case, we got Wiedemann. Center to number 21, Windquist. And a pick call is going to bring it back as Wiedemann was wide open.
I think it was only a matter of time before a pick was called. It was kind of hard to tell if Finland was doing a double cutting on purpose, but there seemed to be a lot of white shirts going into the same spot and creating a lot of traffic. So hopefully they can clean up their vertical stack here in the end zone.
And that one's a tough pass.
Oh, my goodness.
But recovered. And that was a Savolainen to Rekula to Nagy connection. And a layout D there by Scott. Almost stopped Finland in their tracks as they scored their second of this game. And what is an important point for this half to get their confidence back. But that was close in the end zone.
Absolutely. I'm a little bit in shock right now. I think the only thing that made that play possible was how we're feeling a little bit of a breeze now. Lets the disc pop back up. I think that'll be a lesson to both teams here. They're going to know that if they're trying to make a defensive play, they have to catch it or it has to be a real smackdown.
Absolutely. Finland feeling good about it, but Rekula on the sideline knowing that that wasn't the throw he wanted to make there, or should have made in that particular case.
And I do have to say, looking at the score here, 7 for New Zealand, 2 for Finland, I don't think that this is very reflective of how the strength of the Finnish team. I do think that we're going to see them claw back into this game a little bit more, just getting out maybe some nerves or dealing with the wind a little bit. But I do think that that's going to change very quickly.
On the sideline now, we've got Burns back to Doyle. Back to Ford, up the line to Elliott, and moving it quickly past the zone. And quick point to number 3, Fitzpatrick Cockram. And that's the first half for New Zealand. So their O-line, which is what was just out there, pretty much delivering on demand, but the zone, it appeared to be a zone, chasing most of the time.
Yeah, I think that zone was a little bit too loose. They never really set up and established a mark or decided what the goal of the zone is to be. We always talk about that. Is it supposed to be a containment zone? Are we trying to keep it in the middle? Are we trying to push the discs out to the side? And that didn't really dictate anything. I think New Zealand, as soon as they broke past it, the zone didn't call themselves off. They never were able to set something properly, so they probably should have gone to person defense a little bit sooner.
And it was quickly adapted to as well. We're here at the halftime break now, and as we watch the Finnish players continue to throw and practice in the wind, we'll take a break as well. Here at the field number 1, sponsored by Cut and supported by Discraft, Universe Point, VC, Greatest, and I believe that's all those sponsors here. And we'll catch you in a few minutes. Thank you.
And welcome back. We're into the second half of this match. Up, we have New Zealand men facing off against Finland. This has been a heck of a match so far. New Zealand taking half 8-2 over the Finnish team. Here, it's been a game of athleticism. We've seen some pretty incredible bids by the New Zealand side. Finland unable to come up with an answer yet. I'm Naomi Redmond, joined by Tushar Singh here up in the booth, and we are excited to see what the rest of this game looks like.
Yeah, it's an exciting matchup. I think Finland's starting to get their legs under them. New Zealand, though, with a very strong squad here, and we've seen that on the women's side as well. In that game we commentated end of day yesterday, where they played the Netherlands.
Yeah, yesterday afternoon we got a chance to see a real barn burner of a game in between the New Zealand women and the Netherlands, with the Netherlands ending up coming out on top. But it was really exciting, and I think both of us a little bit surprised by how strong this New Zealand program, juniors program, seems to be across the board. And it's been really great to see their skill across all spots on the field.
Absolutely. Doyle with the disc, centers it to Ford, sends it to Fitzpatrick Cockrum, and we're seeing this back line once again as it's popped into the end zone, and lots.
Oh my goodness.
A big battle, and no call there as Whitlock takes a break from being a handler to be a downfield utility player as he's listed here.
That's the second big grab he's had up high in the end zone, really showing his stripes, showing that he's more than just a thrower, more than just a receiver. He's definitely the all-star on this New Zealand squad right now.
And they're all feeling pretty good. That throw, though, perhaps a little bit rushed and into a bit of traffic. There were 4 people under that.
I agree and I disagree. I think I like the throw, maybe don't like the decision. I like the way that the throw came out of his hands, that's going downwind. He put enough edge on it to keep the disc afloat, and it didn't crash into the ground early. It didn't float too much, though. Just gave Whitlock just enough time to get under it. However, like you said, there were a few too many players in the area, not really creating enough separation. Whitlock really had to make a big play on that to come up with a grab.
And Recula gives it to Wiedemann. He's looking, finds Winquist. And on the far sideline is the other Winquist. Back to. And looking for that back corner of the end zone, but well out of bounds. One player currently free in the New Zealand stack. And this disc is coming back far down the field. Seems like it was never in. And Finland going with a zone. Appears that they have what is known as a rabbit, with one player continually marking up.
Maybe a forced middle here, though.
Certainly appears to be the case, as Winquist is now marking away from us and just containing. And that one is a turnover, as it was dropped by Mercer. Just scissoring it.
And that's what we were talking about before. The zone has to make a decision for what they want to do, so that containment zone was really effective.
And Recula with a backhand break that had a little bit of zip on it. You were speaking about that earlier as well. But just speaking about the drop earlier, that was due to defensive pressure. That was heavily pressured, and that zone looking good. As New Zealand moves it far across the field. Now with Oren, dumps it back to hammer over the top to Mercer. And then McEwen hammers it again. That's a second for the point. Lots of time for Sider to dump it back to Horan. And then another hammer by Mercer. McEwen. Mercer. Battles the mark to get it to McEwen. Finland staying in the zone. Far side to Oren. Mercer. Oren. Mercer. Hammers it. Lots of time to number 24, Skinner, who, after making the catch, steps on the line.
There's a lot of hammers in that point, and we haven't really seen too many upside-down throws so far in the tournament. I'd say that a lot of these juniors teams, they've been in that sense a little bit more reserved than you would expect, especially against that zone, that huge zone. Finland really held it maybe for a little bit too long there. What do you think?
I think so as well. They could have moved it around a little bit. Great confidence from New Zealand, though, to hammer into the wind as well. Admittedly, there wasn't much pressure either, though. The zone really was responding to the movement rather than trying to shut down and contain.
And you can say from the zone, from a coaching point of view, New Zealand was forced to throw 3 or 4 hammers in that point, which means those are lower percentage throws, and so maybe that is a win for the zone. The zone now just needs to take a look at what they can do better to stop those hammers as well.
Yeah, definitely if you're going to be throwing a hammer to the far corner of the end zone where the player is essentially on the sideline, that's important to consider. Runanen now also operating against the zone. To Vernon, back to Runanen. Oh, and then unfortunately dropped. And Whitlock pops it, had 2 receivers available as New Zealand gets their 8th break of the game to make it 11-2. And they just couldn't get moving there, could Finland?
No, and it's really too bad. That drop is so unfortunate, right in the middle. Sometimes you don't see them coming at you. When you're playing offense against a zone, so many of the passes have to be so quick, and you have to be able to react so quickly. And that's just really, really too bad. It happens a lot. It's just too bad.
Yeah, and it's one of those tough breaks. But Finland now on offense, going with the wind as it's picking up. They have a few good matchups still coming up. This is their last game of the day, potentially. It looks like, because this is the last round for Pool A, at least today. But tomorrow then, they will be playing against, it appears, the Dominican Republic. It's an opportunity to develop some more confidence there as the throw goes to ground on the far side of the field. And their morning matchup will also be against, so tomorrow they play Hong Kong and the Dominican Republic, the 7th and 8th seeds, the 8th and 9th seeds in their pool. As Ford is the middle handler against a cup this time. Oren centers it. Ford hanging on to it perhaps a little too long. Doyle. Ford. Far side, we see.
Nice find.
That was Driscoll motioning for it. Now Rolfe back to Oren. And so close to the line is Ford. There is a call as to whether he was out or not. And he is perhaps even right now an inch and a half from the line.
And that's one of those rules for anyone who might not know. In Ultimate, if you are touching the line at all, that means you are out of bounds.
At the first point of contact after catching it.
Right.
Just clarify that a little bit. You can put your part of your foot onto the line afterwards, or even have your body entirely out of bounds afterwards.
It's true.
You just have to run it back in. That is a turnover. Vettari picking it up. Center to Wiedemann. Back to Rakula. And this throw just a little bit out of the reach.
And that is a really nice throw, that around flick throw into space. Just needs to be dialed in a little bit more. Just a couple of inches, and that would have been a completion.
And Rolfe was unmarked there for putting it to Kwok for 12. And the 9th break, Finland take their first timeout of the second half. There's minor adjustment here, and I think tomorrow for Finland is going to be a big confidence-building day as they take on a couple of the lower seed teams, but still, seeding here is kind of uncertain as you don't know what the programs in each country will produce. It is also quite a distance for each one of these teams, so you can't necessarily get the 28-team rosters as we've seen for the locals like Canada or the Americans, who admittedly really only have to travel for maybe 5 hours.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to recognize as well these teams, these juniors teams, you never really know what you're going to get, especially in Europe. The system a little bit different than we have here in North America. They have a stronger aging system. So there's the U14 program, the U17 program, and you kind of age out of those as you get older, and that's how you end up with the national program eventually with some players who've played together for a very long time. On the flip side, here in North America, specifically in Canada, we only have a U20 juniors program. We were speaking about it the other night with Team Canada. Particularly, there's one player on Team Canada, the women's team, Sarah Jacobson, who's been playing on Manitoba Mofo for the last 5 years, since she was 12 years old. So that speaks to the sort of difference in the programs. Here in the European programs, they really only play together for a couple years. They might age out together, but it's not necessarily one person creating like the backbone of the team, one person there for such a long period of time.
And the connections from those youth leagues or youth teams as well to the touring program, the adult competitive touring program, that transition also happens perhaps sooner here, or the teams are more willing to take on those younger players as well and develop them.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a lot of overlap in between the juniors programs and the adult programs in Canada, and usually they help each other out quite a bit.
Unlucky bounce there for Mervirta. I'm going to spend some time after this game determining where I need to enunciate. Mervirta looking for options, not seeing too many of them upfield. We're not getting strong cuts. He's going to have to boot it, and he might get some luck there.
Nice grab.
Nagy, there is a call. This will not be a turnover. This will come back.
Got lucky there, almost took out one of our lovely media photographers here helping us out with this tournament.
we're going to have the double situation, but that might actually be Pat with Discraft down there with Henry. They've been here pretty much this whole week, and they've been doing the tour this summer with all the World Championships being in North America. And it's going all the way back to still a very high stall count, and fortunately picked up by number 88, Kuvaya. And float. A little bit of a messy stack as Whitlock smacks that to the ground, as Kuvaya was also making a bid on it. Finland with a lot of defensive pressure on that one.
Absolutely, and every throw was just not quite dialed in. They kept getting lucky, but eventually.
And McEwen decides that he's got Whitlock in the end zone and just lets it float there, and Whitlock, using his athleticism to the advantage to make that 13 and gives New Zealand their 10th break of the game.
It's quite the grab.
They had some options on the unders, though. Kwok was making the in cut, and I think McEwen just saw the deep and let it hang out there. It's going to be a dangerous sort of throw to try and take when they're matched up into their semis or their quarters, and they move forward from that point.
As we were talking about earlier, some of these plays, a lot of the teams that we've watched here on this live stream, there've been a mistake here, a mistake there, and it's okay when you're playing against a lower seeded team because you have a chance of getting it back. But once you play against some of the more higher seeded, polished teams, it's really, really hard to earn back a mistake.
Nieminen moves it to Vinquist, but unfortunate drop there, and that zip just seems to be taking the disc a little bit past to what they're used to. Mercer with the disc on the far side. Did not have the unders. Back to Scott in the middle. Scott hammers it. And that is taken by Driscoll with a little roll on the ground. So 14-2.
Sometimes it's easier to watch the disc all the way into your hands and you can't focus on running at the same time as well. I know I say that about myself all the time.
You've had quite a few layouts. I think the one that's trending on Facebook right now was your semifinal layout for the win against Iris last year's.
Yes.
When the Sixers in their first year became CUC champs.
I know I've been seeing a lot of memories popping up of the Sixers Canadian Nationals tour last year. It was our second year as a team, and we played up against Vancouver Traffic in the final over in Ottawa, and it was pretty epic to come out with a win over Traffic in that game.
Yeah, that's Traffic for a long time, the number one team in Canada, going through a transition right now. So moving forward from this game, both teams and all teams in the open division will essentially have the top 4 teams in their pools, and there are 2 pools, go immediately into quarterfinals. In the women's pools, the top 3 go into a power pool before the top 4 will go into semifinals. So a bit of a different structure there. McEwen there with the D. It's going to be coming in on the sideline, marked by Nagy. And that's Elliott. Looking for the middle. Movement now by Ford, who then drops it. Picked up by Vetari. Rekula. Nice backhand to number 76, Winquist. Up line to the other Winquist. Into the end zone. Oh. And just grabbed by Elliott. Rolf looking deep, but he's going to take the end of the clock. Elliott sends it to Benter Lynch, to Rolf, and then Hammer. And perhaps not the best choice or execution in that case.
I think both. As we were talking about before, that's the downhill way. So all the discs are just going to get pushed down. And if you open up the bottom of the disc, as you do with a hammer, it just sinks it right into the ground. And so you need to really put a little bit more angle instead of having something fully inverted. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. No,
in that case, a scuba perhaps would have been a little bit. If you're going to go with the invert, start it off a little bit flatter.
It's just science, folks.
Beat him into Recula, and foot block by Benter Lynch. Picked up immediately by Rolf. Centered, and then Kwok for the point to make it 15-2. And that's the game. Little bit of a tough match there for Finland.
Yeah, you can't help up here in the booth. You can't help but feel for Finland. I think they were really gunning at the beginning of the game. We did see them maybe doing a bit of a longer warm-up than New Zealand. Maybe that wasn't to their advantage. New Zealand took a more relaxed approach. Both teams, small rosters. It's a very long tournament. And it's just really, it's too bad. I think Finland has a lot of potential, a lot of talent. A lot of the mistakes were throwaways and drops, and frankly, that's one of the easiest things to fix. It's just a matter of throwing and catching, taking a little bit more time to get to know each other, get to calibrate against each other's speed, and frankly, New Zealand just made more athletic defensive plays as well. So it's too bad for Finland, but the tournament's not over for them yet. They've got a few more chances tomorrow to get some good games against Dominican Republic and Hong Kong or China. I can't remember what the other team, the last team in the A pool is.
Hong Kong.
It is Hong Kong. So a great opportunity for them tomorrow. It's the development of their program. They're moving forward. We're so happy that they were able to send a team here. And we hope that they can send another team to Malmo in Sweden. It'll be a little bit closer to home. Hopefully they can send a women's team as well because we have seen great Finnish women's programs. Atletico was just at club championships a few weeks ago in Cincinnati, and they had a great run as well. So good luck to Finland, and definitely I think we'll see New Zealand going deep into the bracket. So really excited for their program, both men's and women's programs.
Absolutely. So lots of ultimates still left here. We are only into the second day of games here at World Junior Under 20 Championships, or World Junior Ultimate Championships. Mentioned also was Malmo, Sweden, which is where in 2020 the World Junior Ultimate Championships will be held. Thank you everyone for joining us here on Field 1, the Cut Camp Field. Sponsors for the tournament are VC Ultimate, Discraft, Universe Point, Greatest Ultimate Bag, and of course Cut Camp. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll have another game to you very soon.